middle of a frozen forest, where silence feels heavier than sound, a broken man and his loyal dog take one more step forward. Sadness lingers in every breath of cold air. Fear creeps in with every shadow moving between the trees. Then comes the moment no one expects, when hope appears where survival feels impossible. A wounded mother, unborn lives, a storm that refuses to stop. As time runs out, loss seems inevitable, until courage answers back. And in the quiet after the storm, what remains is not pain, but a happiness so deep, it feels like redemption. The storm had no edge. It didn't arrive suddenly. It didn't rage. It simply closed in. Snow swallowed the Montana mountains in long, quiet sheets, erasing shape, distance, and sound. Pines bent low under the weight, their branches cracking softly like bones settling. The wind moved steadily, without anger, without mercy, just pressure. The kind that wore things down until they failed. Out in that white nothingness, a German shepherd ran. She moved low to the ground, muscles burning, breath tearing from her lungs in ragged clouds. Snow clung to her fur, packed between her paws, pulling at every step. Behind her, 6 small shapes struggled to keep up, tiny legs sinking too deep, bodies trembling with cold. In her mouth she carried one more, the smallest, the weakest. The puppy's body was limp, wrapped gently in her jaws, its breath shallow and uneven. She adjusted her grip again and again, careful not to hurt it, terrified of letting it slip. She didn't look back. She couldn't afford to. The storm was rising. She felt it in the way the wind shifted, sharper now, more insistent. She had already moved them once, away from the riverbank where ice had begun to crack, away from the hollow that had filled with snow too fast. This was the last run. Ahead, through the blur of white, something dark cut against the storm. A structure, straight lines, angles, shelter. The dog pushed harder, legs screaming, lungs burning. One of the puppies stumbled and fell. She stopped instantly, dropped the one in her mouth just long enough to nudge the fallen pup back onto its feet, then scooped the weakest up again and ran. Behind the storm and the trees, light flickered. Fire. Inside the cabin, Ethan Walker stood near the hearth, staring into the flames. The fire popped and shifted, orange and alive, its warmth barely reaching the edges of the room. Ethan hadn't moved in a long time. He stood the way soldiers did when their bodies were still, but their minds were somewhere else entirely. He wore a faded multicam jacket, frayed at the cuffs. A worn cap sat low on his head, stitched with U.S. Army veteran. 2 dog tags rested against his chest, dull metal catching the firelight when he breathed. On his wrist, a thick black military watch ticked steadily, counting seconds that felt heavier than they should. His eyes, blue-gray and tired, were fixed on the fire, but he wasn't seeing it. Rex lay at his feet. The German shepherd was motionless except for the slow rise and fall of his chest. His tactical collar, marked RX, rested against his thick neck, ears upright, eyes half open, always listening. The wind rattled the windows. Then Rex stood. Ethan's head snapped up instantly. "What is it?" he muttered. Rex moved toward the window, body tense, ears locked forward. No growl, no bark, just focus. Ethan stepped closer and pulled the curtain aside. At first, he saw nothing but white. Then movement. A shape burst through the snow line, dark against the storm. A dog. She ran hard, her body screaming exhaustion. 6 puppies staggered behind her like shadows, barely keeping their feet. In her mouth, something small dangled, too still. Ethan's breath caught. What the hell? The mother dog reached the edge of the clearing and nearly collapsed. She dropped the puppy for half a second, nudged the others forward with her nose, then lifted the smallest again and pushed on toward the cabin. Ethan didn't think. He moved. Rex! He yanked the door open and the storm exploded inside. Snow whipped across the floor. Cold punched his lungs. The mother dog skidded to a stop just feet away, eyes wide, chest heaving. She didn't bark. She didn't retreat. She just stood there, shaking, defiant. 6 puppies clustered behind her. The weakest still held gently in her mouth. Ethan dropped to one knee immediately, lowering himself, hands open. Easy, he said, voice steady despite the chaos. You're safe. The dog's eyes locked onto his. Not fear, calculation. Behind Ethan, Rex stood like a statue, body angled protectively but silent. 2 soldiers assessing the same moment from opposite sides. The wind screamed. Snow buried the porch. Ethan realized something with sudden clarity. If he hesitated, even for a moment, this ended here. He reached out, slow and deliberate, and touched the doorframe. Inside, he said softly. Come inside. The mother dog hesitated. Her legs trembled. The puppy whimpered weakly. Then she stepped forward. Ethan backed up, keeping the door wide. The heat of the fire spilled outward, colliding with the cold in a visible rush of steam. She crossed the threshold and immediately moved to the rug near the hearth. Carefully, so carefully, she lowered the puppy onto the floor. The little body shuddered. Ethan wrapped it in a blanket without hesitation, movements precise and controlled. He checked its breathing, nodded once. Alive. Behind them, the other puppies piled in, collapsing in a trembling heap. The mother turned instantly back toward the door. No, Ethan started. She was already gone. Back into the storm. Ethan stood there, frozen, heart pounding, not from fear, but from understanding. She's not done, he said quietly. Rex moved to the door and sat, eyes fixed on the white void outside. Minutes passed. Then a shape emerged again. She returned, dragging herself forward, another puppy in her mouth. And then again, and again. Each trip slower than the last. Each return more desperate. Ethan became a station instead of a man. He opened the door. He took the puppy. He wrapped it. He moved it to the fire. No wasted motion, no words. Rex guarded the threshold, allowing her passage, never once breaking stance. By the final trip, the mother dog collapsed just inside the doorway. Ethan caught her shoulder, steadying her as she placed the last puppy down. 6 puppies, all alive. Ethan closed the door. The storm raged outside, furious at being denied. Inside, the fire burned. The mother dog lay down at last, curling around her litter with a strength that had nothing left to give. Ethan sank to the floor nearby, breath shaking, heart racing. He looked at Rex. You see that? He whispered. Rex lay down beside him, never taking his eyes off the door. Ethan stared at the family by the fire, at the mother who had run through hell without stopping, at the puppies breathing because she refused to quit. Something inside him shifted, not healed, not yet, but awake. Outside, the blizzard howled. Inside, a door had been opened, and nothing that crossed it would be left behind again. The storm didn't ease. If anything, it leaned in closer, like it had noticed the door was open and taken that personally. The mother German shepherd returned again, and again. Each time she emerged from the white with another small life held carefully between her teeth. Snow clung to her fur in jagged crystals. Her breath came out in thick, uneven clouds. She moved slower now, not from hesitation, but from depletion. Ethan stood by the open door, boots planted, shoulders squared, letting the cold tear at his face. He didn't feel it the way other people might. Cold was simple, honest. It didn't pretend to be anything else. Inside, the fire burned steady. The first two puppies lay wrapped near the hearth, tiny chests rising and falling. Rex stood watch a few steps away, body angled outward, ears high, tracking every movement between the door and the storm. The mother entered, placed the third puppy down, and turned immediately back toward the dark. She didn't look at Ethan. She didn't look at Rex. She trusted the pattern. Ethan grabbed another blanket, folding it with precise movements. He laid it down, spaced just enough so the pups weren't piled too tight. His hands moved with the same discipline he used to check gear. Nothing rushed, nothing wasted. "You're cutting it close," he muttered, more observation than warning. The dog paused at the threshold this time. For half a second, her legs trembled. Snow slid from her back onto the floor. Then she pushed forward and vanished again. Rex shifted. A low sound vibrated in his chest. Not aggression, but concern. Ethan glanced at him. "Stay sharp," Ethan said quietly. Rex didn't need the reminder. Minutes passed. The storm swallowed time. The world outside the cabin shrank to 10 feet of visibility and pure intent. Ethan found himself counting without realizing it. Seconds. Breaths. The gap between her trips. When she came back with the fourth puppy, her pace was slower. When she brought the fifth, she staggered once on the porch boards and caught herself with sheer will. Ethan stepped closer without thinking. Hand out. Then stopped himself. He remembered something important. You don't rush someone who's still standing. She made it inside, set the puppy down, and for the first time, she didn't leave immediately. She stood there, sides heaving, eyes half-lidded. Rex took one step forward. The mother's head snapped up, ears angling, not defensive but alert. The air tightened. Ethan dropped to one knee instantly. "That's enough," he said calmly. Not to Rex, not to her, just to the moment. Rex froze. His gaze flicked to Ethan's face. He read it the way he always did. No threat. No command to engage. Stand down. Rex lowered himself to the floor but kept his head up, watching. The mother dog studied him for a long breath. Then she turned away, took 2 steps toward the door, and stopped again. She looked back. Not at Rex, at Ethan. Her eyes weren't pleading, they were measuring. Ethan held her gaze. He didn't smile, didn't soften his posture. He simply stayed where he was, steady and open, the way you stayed when you meant what you said. She turned and went back into the storm. The 6th trip took longer, long enough that Ethan felt the old tension creep into his spine, the part of his mind that remembered waiting for someone who didn't come back. He hated that part. Rex stood again without sound. Then, a shape, barely visible. She emerged, dragging herself forward, the last puppy clutched gently, stubbornly. Ethan was already moving when she reached the porch. He didn't touch her. He just opened the door wider, blocking the wind with his body. She crossed the threshold and collapsed to a sit. For a moment, no one moved. Then she placed the puppy down and exhaled a long, shuddering breath that seemed to empty her completely. That was it. No more trips. Ethan closed the door. The sound of the latch settling into place was small, but final. The storm raged outside, furious at being shut out. Inside, the room felt suddenly fragile, like a ceasefire no one wanted to break. Ethan crouched and checked each puppy. counting, always counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all alive, cold, weak, but alive. He adjusted the blankets, stoked the fire, and set a shallow bowl of lukewarm water near the mother. She sniffed it, then drank slowly, eyes never leaving her pups. Rex approached at last, carefully, respectfully. He stopped 3 feet away and sat. The mother lifted her head, watching him. Rex didn't look at her. He looked at Ethan. Permission. Ethan nodded once. Rex lay down, not beside the pups, not blocking the door, between them and the rest of the world. The mother relaxed, just a fraction. Ethan leaned back against the table, exhaustion settling into his bones like a familiar ache. He watched the firelight dance across fur and floor and thought about how strange it was, how the world could narrow down to this single room and still feel like too much and not enough all at once. He realized something then. The dog hadn't chosen the cabin because it was warm. She'd chosen it because something in her had recognized something in him. A place where people stayed. Ethan reached up and touched his dog tags, feeling the metal warm against his skin. "And no one gets left behind," he said quietly. Rex's ear twitched. The mother dog closed her eyes for the first time that night. Outside, the storm howled. Inside, 6 small lives breathed. And Ethan Walker stayed awake, because some watches were worth keeping. Morning didn't arrive the way it usually did. There was no soft light, no gentle transition. Just a dull gray pressing against the windows, as if the storm had stepped back only far enough to catch its breath. Ethan Walker was already awake. He hadn't slept. Not really. He'd sat in the wooden chair near the fire all night, boots still on, jacket still zipped halfway. His big black military watch ticked steadily on his wrist, marking time the way it always had, without mercy, without emotion. Rex hadn't moved either. The German shepherd lay stretched across the cabin floor, body positioned between the door and the small nest of blankets by the fire. His eyes were half open, ears twitching at every shift of wind outside. A guard on extended watch. The mother dog lay curled around her puppies. Her breathing was deep now, heavy with exhaustion, but her body remained tense in sleep, ready to wake, ready to fight if needed. Ethan stood slowly, joints stiff, and moved closer to the fire. That's when he noticed it. One of the puppies wasn't moving, not like the others. The rest of the litter twitched in sleep, tiny paws jerking, mouths opening and closing as if dreaming of warmth and milk. But one, smallest of the group, darker than the rest, lay too still. Ethan crouched immediately. He didn't panic. Panic was loud. Panic wasted time. He placed 2 fingers lightly against the puppy's side. The breathing was there, barely, shallow, uneven, like something trying to remember how. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Rex," he said quietly. The dog was already beside him. Rex lowered his head, sniffed once, and then looked up at Ethan. There was no confusion in his eyes, only confirmation. Something was wrong. The mother dog stirred. She lifted her head, eyes locking instantly onto Ethan's hands. She rose and nudged the puppy gently with her nose. No response. She nudged again, firmer this time. The puppy made a sound, but it wasn't a cry. It was a weak, broken exhale. Ethan felt that sound hit somewhere deep behind his ribs. He'd heard it before, not from animals, from men who were trying not to die. He scooped the puppy up carefully, cradling it against his chest. The little body was cold, too cold to be in a room with a fire burning. Ethan wrapped one arm around it, pressing it beneath his jacket, skin to skin. The mother dog stood frozen, watching every movement. Rex sat, tense, eyes darting between Ethan and the door, like he was calculating exits. "Easy," Ethan murmured. "I've got him." He moved quickly now, but not frantically. He set a pot of water to warm. Not hot. Never hot. He grabbed the last of his emergency milk powder from the cupboard. Hands steady, movements precise. He worked the way he always had under pressure. Break the problem down. Control what you can. Ignore what you can't. He knelt by the fire, wrapping the puppy tighter, rubbing small circles over its chest with his thumb. "Breathe," he whispered. "Come on." The mother dog took a step closer, then another. She stopped just short of touching him. Her ears flattened slightly. Not fear. Focus. Ethan met her eyes. "I'm not taking him away," he said quietly. "I'm keeping him here." She watched him for a long moment, then did something that made his breath hitch. She gently picked up the puppy with her mouth and placed it back into his hands. Deliberate. Careful. A transfer. Ethan swallowed hard. That gesture, he knew it too well. It was what soldiers did when they passed a wounded teammate to the medic. No words. Just trust and urgency wrapped together. "Okay," Ethan said softly. "I won't waste it." Rex shifted closer, pressing his shoulder against Ethan's knee, grounding him. The water warmed. Ethan mixed the milk thinner than usual, and drew it into a small syringe he kept from an old first aid kit. He touched one drop to the puppy's mouth. Nothing. Another drop. The puppy's tongue moved. Barely. Ethan exhaled slowly and fed another drop. Time stretched. The fire cracked. The wind pushed against the walls like it wanted back in. Ethan's hands began to shake. Not from fear, but from memory. Another room. Another body. Another moment when everything depended on whether someone kept breathing. "Stay with me," he murmured, not sure who he was talking to anymore. The mother dog lay down beside him, close enough that her warmth brushed his leg. She didn't interfere. She didn't whine. She watched. Rex stood and repositioned himself directly behind Ethan, a solid presence at his back, like he was anchoring him to the room. Minutes passed. Then, the puppy coughed, a tiny, sharp sound, ugly, imperfect, beautiful. Ethan froze. The puppy's chest rose again, deeper this time. He laughed once, quietly, breathless, a sound he hadn't made in a long time. "There you go," he whispered. "That's it." The mother dog leaned forward and licked the puppy's head once, slow and deliberate. Ethan leaned back against the table, exhaustion crashing over him now that the immediate danger had pulled back. He didn't move away from the puppy. He kept it tucked close, letting the fire and his body do their work. Outside, the storm finally began to thin. Light crept through the frost on the windows. Pale, hesitant. Ethan looked down at the small life breathing against his chest and felt something unfamiliar settle into him. Not relief. Responsibility. He realized then that this wasn't just about keeping something alive. It was about staying, about not stepping back when things got heavy. Rex rested his head on Ethan's boot, eyes closed for the first time since the night before. The mother dog curled around the rest of the litter and watched Ethan with new eyes. Not desperate now. Certain. Ethan glanced at his dog tags, then back at the puppy. "I guess you're not done yet," he said quietly. The puppy breathed, and Ethan Walker stayed right where he was. Ethan built the shelter the way he built everything, as if someone's life depended on it. Because it did. By late afternoon, the sky had taken on that flat, colorless tone Ethan had learned to respect. Not dark, not bright, just wrong. The kind of light that meant weather was deciding whether to forgive you or test you again. He worked just off the cabin porch, where the overhang cut the wind. Old planks from the shed. A tarp folded double. Straw packed tight for insulation. The structure wasn't big, but it was smart. Low profile, open on one side, back braced against the cabin wall to break the wind. No wasted motion. No guesswork. Rex stayed close, pacing in a slow arc, ears rotating, reading the world beyond the trees. Every few minutes he stopped and stared into the forest like he was tracking something Ethan couldn't see. The mother dog watched from the doorway, her body positioned between the shelter and her puppies. She didn't interfere. She assessed. When Ethan finished, he stepped back and checked every seam, tugged the tarp, pressed down on the roof. It held. Good enough, he said quietly. The mother dog moved first. She lifted one puppy gently and carried it into the shelter, laying it deep into the straw. Then another. Then another. Ethan stood still and let her work. Rex sat beside him, steady and silent. The sky shifted. The wind changed direction, sharp, sudden. Ethan felt it in his chest before he heard it. A low roar rolled through the valley, distant but fast. Snow that had rested peacefully on the pines shook loose, dusting the air. Rex's body stiffened. That was all the warning Ethan got. The second storm hit like an ambush. Wind slammed into the cabin hard enough to rattle the windows. Snow came sideways now, stinging and thick, erasing the world in seconds. The temperature dropped so fast it felt personal. The shelter creaked. Ethan turned just in time to see the tarp snap loose at one corner. Damn it! He was moving before the word left his mouth. The mother dog was already there, inside the shelter, body curved over her puppies, ears flat, muscles locked. She didn't run. She didn't hesitate. She stayed. The roof groaned. A board cracked. Ethan lunged forward into knee-deep snow, the wind tearing at his jacket like it wanted to peel him apart. Ice stung his face. His boots slipped, caught, slipped again. He reached the shelter as the roof buckled inward. "Rex!" he shouted. Rex barreled through the snow without hesitation, planting himself beside the structure, bracing against it with his shoulder. Together they held it, man and dog, against a force that didn't care who they were. The roof collapsed anyway. Straw exploded outward. The tarp tore free. The mother dog barked once, sharp, commanding. Ethan dropped to his knees and reached inside, pulling puppies free one by one, shoving them inside his jacket, cradling them against his chest. They were warm, alive. The mother dog followed, pressing close, her body shielding the last puppy until Ethan grabbed it. "Inside!" Ethan yelled. Not to her, not to Rex, just to the moment itself. Rex turned and ran for the cabin door, skidding on ice, shouldering it open with his weight. Ethan staggered after him, vision narrowing, breath burning. The mother dog stayed tight to his leg, never once breaking stride. They crashed through the doorway. Warmth hit them like mercy. Ethan dropped to the floor by the fire, shrugging open his jacket and laying the puppies down in a careful pile of blankets. He rubbed them dry with shaking hands, counting under his breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all there. The mother dog shook the snow from her coat and immediately circled her pups, checking each one with her nose. Then she moved to the door and planted herself there, standing guard. The storm hammered the cabin like it was offended. Wind screamed. Snow slammed the walls. The roof groaned. Ethan leaned back against the table, chest heaving, heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. It felt like a different place for a second, a different time. Pressure, noise, the sense that if you failed, something important wouldn't make it through the night. His hands clenched into fists. Rex came and sat in front of him, close enough that their knees touched. The dog looked up, calm and steady, eyes locked on Ethan's. Here. Now. You're here. Ethan exhaled slowly. The mother dog remained by the door, muscles tight, eyes burning amber in the firelight. She didn't lie down. She didn't rest. She held the line. Hours passed. The storm howled itself empty. At some point, the wind softened. The pounding eased. The cabin stopped shaking. Ethan slid down to the floor beside the fire, back against the wall, exhaustion finally winning. His eyes closed without permission. When he woke, the light had changed. Morning, thin and pale, filtered through the windows. Silence pressed in, careful and clean. The storm was gone. Ethan sat up slowly. His body ached. His hands were scraped and raw. His jacket lay frozen stiff near the door. The puppies slept in a tangled heap of warmth and breath. The mother dog lay beside them now, finally resting. Rex lay at Ethan's feet, head on his boot. Ethan looked around the room and felt something settle inside him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not relief, pride. He reached up and touched the brim of his faded cap. Still got it, he murmured. Outside, the world glittered under fresh snow. Inside, life had held. And Ethan Walker knew one thing for certain. When the storm came back for what he was protecting, he didn't step aside. He went straight into the white. Pain didn't arrive all at once. It crept in the way it always did, quiet, patient, almost polite. Waiting until the job was finished. Ethan Walker didn't notice it at first. He was still moving on adrenaline, still counting breaths in the room, still watching the puppies rise and fall in their pile of blankets near the fire. The mother dog lay curled around them now, finally allowing her body to rest. Her eyes stayed open, though, always watching. Rex stood by the door. Ethan pushed himself upright, intending to add more wood to the fire. The moment he shifted his weight, the room tilted. His right leg buckled. He caught the table edge just in time, fingers digging into rough wood. A sharp, white-hot pain flared up his side, stealing the air from his lungs. "Damn," he muttered. He looked down. Blood. Not pouring, but enough. Dark, already soaking into the fabric beneath his jacket where a splintered board or twisted nail must have found him during the collapse. He hadn't felt it then. He never did. Rex was at his side instantly. The dog nudged Ethan's knee with his nose, firm and insistent. His ears were high now, posture tense in a way that meant, this is wrong. "I'm fine," Ethan said automatically. It was a lie he'd practiced for years. He tried to straighten. Pain punched back harder this time, sending a tremor through his body. His breath hitched. The room narrowed. The mother dog lifted her head. Her gaze snapped to Ethan, alert and sharp. She rose slowly, stepping closer, placing herself between him and the puppies, not defensive but aware. Ethan sank back into the chair by the fire, jaw clenched. "Just sit it out," he murmured, mostly to himself. He pressed a cloth against the wound, assessing. It wasn't clean. He could feel warmth spreading under his ribs. His vision blurred slightly at the edges. That set off alarms in his head he didn't like hearing. Rex whined once, a short, controlled sound. Not panic, warning. Ethan looked at him. "No," he said quietly. You stay. Rex didn't. He backed up 2 steps, eyes locked on Ethan's face. Then he turned and sprinted for the door. "Rex!" Ethan called. The dog shouldered the door open and vanished into the cold. The wind rushed in, scattering ash across the floor. Ethan stared after him, heart pounding for a different reason now. "Damn it," he whispered. The mother dog watched the open door, ears angled forward. She didn't follow. She trusted Rex the way soldiers trusted a runner sent for help. Ethan focused on breathing. In. Out. Control what you can. Minutes passed, then more. The fire popped. The puppies stirred. The cabin creaked softly as the temperature shifted. Ethan's thoughts drifted in dangerous directions, places where pain turned into memory. He forced himself back. Stay here. Finally, a sound, an engine. Faint, distant, growing closer. Ethan laughed once, breathless and disbelieving. Rex's bark cut through the air outside, sharp, urgent. The door flew open. Cold rushed in, and with it, a woman in a heavy winter coat, boots crusted with snow, medical bag slung over her shoulder. Her hair was pulled back tight, breath fogging the air as her eyes swept the room with practiced speed. "Where is he?" she demanded. Rex barked again and ran to Ethan, planting himself at his side like a beacon. The woman followed. "Ethan Walker?" she asked. "That's me," he said hoarsely. She knelt immediately, already pulling on gloves. "I'm Dr. Claire Monroe, Rural Emergency. Your dog found me halfway down the service road." Ethan glanced at Rex. "You ran all that way?" Rex's tail flicked once. Dr. Monroe cut open Ethan's jacket, assessing the wound with swift efficiency. "You're lucky," she said. "Another inch and we'd be having a very different conversation." "Still breathing," Ethan replied faintly. She gave him a look. "Let's keep it that way." She cleaned the wound, pressure firm but careful. Ethan hissed through his teeth, sweat beading on his forehead. "Hold still," she said. "I am." "That's not what your heart rate says." She stitched him up right there by the fire, movement steady, professional. The mother dog watched closely, stepping forward only once, until Rex gave a low sound and she stopped. Trust layered on trust. When it was done, Dr. Monroe leaned back on her heels. "You're not going anywhere for a while," she said. "And if you try, your dog will probably stop you." Rex sat taller. Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Guess I owe you," he said, looking at Rex. Rex leaned forward and pressed his forehead against Ethan's knee. Outside, the wind softened. Inside, the fire burned steady. And Ethan Walker understood something with absolute clarity. He wasn't alone anymore. Not in this cabin. Not in this fight. Not in his life. Spring arrived quietly. No announcement, no celebration. Just the slow decision of the earth to let go. Ethan Walker noticed it in the mornings first. The cold no longer felt like a threat. It felt like a memory. Snow pulled back from the edges of the porch, revealing dark soil beneath, damp and alive. Meltwater slid from the roof in steady drops, tapping the ground with a patience that felt earned. Ethan stood outside with a mug of coffee, steam rising into the pale air. His body had healed the way bodies do when given time and stubborn care. The wound along his side had closed cleanly, leaving a thin scar that tightened when he stretched. He welcomed it. Scars meant something had ended. Beside him sat Rex. She was still unmistakably a German shepherd, brown and black, strong lines, intelligent eyes, but there was nothing sharp left in her posture. The tension that once lived in her shoulders had softened. She no longer scanned the forest like an animal expecting disaster. She watched it the way a mother watched a quiet yard, aware, but at peace. Her tactical collar still sat around her neck, worn now, the name Rex faded but visible. It wasn't a symbol of duty anymore, it was identity. Inside the cabin, the puppies were chaos. They had outgrown the careful stillness of survival and replaced it with reckless joy. Long legs tangled, paws too big for their bodies, ears that couldn't decide whether to stand tall or flop sideways. They tumbled over one another, barking at shadows, chasing nothing at all. Rex watched them from the doorway, not hovering, not guarding, just watching. Ethan leaned against the porch railing, eyes on her. "You did good," he said quietly. Rex didn't look at him. She didn't need to. The first family arrived later that week, a couple in their early 40s, weathered in the way people who worked outdoors often were. They crouched down, hands open, letting the puppies come to them. One pup climbed straight into the man's lap, like it had been waiting its whole life for that moment. Rex rose and stepped forward. Ethan held his breath, but Rex stopped short, sniffed once, and stepped back. Approval. That pattern repeated itself over the following weeks. One puppy left with a family who laughed too loud and cried too easily. Another went to a quiet home with a retired firefighter. One was adopted by a woman who worked nights and needed someone to greet her in the morning. Each goodbye was clean. No whining, no hesitation. Rex sniffed each puppy once, slow, deliberate, and then turned away. The work was being passed on. Ethan didn't interfere. He didn't give speeches. He didn't pretend this was easy. He stood nearby, hands in his jacket pockets, letting things happen the way they needed to. One afternoon, the smallest puppy, the one that had nearly slipped away during the storm, was carried out last. It slept through the goodbye, warm and certain in unfamiliar arms. Rex watched until the truck disappeared down the road. Then she sat. The cabin felt different after that. Quieter, but not empty. Ethan cleaned the blankets, folded them carefully, and stored them away. He repaired the shelter fully this time, replacing broken boards, reinforcing the roof, not because it was needed now, but because it mattered that it existed. Rex stayed close, moving only when Ethan moved, resting when he rested. That night, they sat by the fire. No storm outside, no urgency inside, just warmth. Ethan reached for his dog tags without thinking, letting the metal warm between his fingers. For years, they had been an anchor to something heavy. Now, they felt like proof of distance traveled. "You're staying," he said softly. Rex lifted her head and looked at him, not questioning, not searching. Staying had already been decided. Spring deepened into summer. Ethan repaired fences for neighbors, hauled wood, drove into town once a week for supplies. People learned his name, learned that he didn't say much, but he showed up. Rex became a constant presence beside him. She waited while he worked, walked the perimeter at night, slept near the door, not because she had to, but because that's where she felt useful. The nightmares came less often. When they did, Rex was there, silent, solid, real. By fall, the cabin no longer felt like a place Ethan hid. It felt like a place that held. The first snow of the new winter came gently, settling across the porch and pine branches like it remembered the ground beneath it. Ethan stood at the window, jacket buttoned, breath fogging the glass. Rex stood beside him. Same spot as the first night. Different meaning. "I thought I was done," Ethan said quietly. thought everything that mattered was behind me. Rex pressed her shoulder against his leg. He nodded slowly. I was wrong. Outside, the world turned white again, but this time it didn't feel like erasure. It felt like rest. A man who believed he had nothing left to give. A mother who gave everything she had and stayed. Two wounded souls who met in a storm, not to be rescued, but to remember how to live. Sometimes miracles don't arrive with light or sound. Sometimes they arrive breathing hard, carrying hope through the snow. And sometimes they stay.